All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Now, as I told you guys, for those of you who were able to do the oral argument, we still are waiting on a couple of people to finish up just because of scheduling conflicts and stuff like that. So we'll be giving you guys feedback on Wednesday. But I do want to, for those of you who have done it, just reiterate how impressed I am with you guys. This is unlike anything you've ever done before, and I'm very aware of that. It is not a presentation like you gave in high school. It is not like anything else that you have done. It is intimidating to talk to a professor, especially in a one-on-one environment, and I try to be as cognizant of that fact as humanly possible. So I do appreciate you guys, going through that, because I know that it can be particularly tough, but I was very, very impressed. So we'll hold off on that until Wednesday. I have done all but I think 2 or 3 of the legal analyses. So please make sure that you have a chance to look over my comments for that. Please let me know if you have any questions about it. I hope that I was able to answer all the questions that I have. I will be posting, I think it's going to be in about 2 weeks when you guys have to resubmit that. So you'll have plenty of notice. Again, remember that you do not, if you decide to resubmit, then you will be, that will replace your previous grade. On the off chance that you take my feedback and just run in the complete opposite direction of where I want you to go, and you get a significantly worse grade on your second than your first, you'll get to keep your first. So you're not bound to the second. You get the higher of the 2 grades, although the vast majority of the time it's going to be a higher grade on the second one. We have about 6 weeks left in class, which is kind of insane to me, because I feel like I just met you guys. But the rest of the semester, we're kind of leaving a lot of the freedom of speech stuff behind. That constitutional argument, the theory of how America views things like expression and symbolism, and this push and pull between liberty and equity that kind of underlies a lot of our approach. Now we're going to get into more of the nitty-gritty stuff. The things that maybe don't have the same passion behind it. We're talking about what you can sue for, who you can sue. When you get a copyright, what happens to that copyright? What's the difference between copyright and trademark? What is the public domain? And why we are looking at, in the next 10 to 15 years, your ability to make your own Superman or Batman cartoon, if you so choose, theoretically. And why, in about 5 years, you'll be able to make your own Mickey Mouse movie without asking Disney for any sort of permission whatsoever. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a conversation about privacy and publicity. This is going to be what we talk about this week. So you guys have kind of heard of this idea of a right to privacy, right? It's something that we enjoy as Americans. Now, pop quiz. We have freedom of speech and religion in this country. What amendment or what part of the Bill of Rights gives us that rights as American citizens? Is it the 4th Amendment, 17th Amendment, 1st Amendment, right? Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. There's some other rights that we can trace to very specific amendments. Everybody in this room had to be given the right to vote by an amendment to the Constitution. Because, as it turns out, that for all the good that the Founding Fathers did in 1791 when they passed the Constitution, they were still pretty racist and pretty sexist. That's not hopefully a controversial opinion, but when you write into the document that an entire half of the population cannot vote because they're women and another significant portion of the population can't vote because of the color of their skin, I think that that's a pretty fair thing to say. Women are given the right to vote in the 19th Amendment. Non-whites are actually technically free persons not enslaved people, are given the right to vote in the 13th Amendment. We have this right to privacy. What amendment gives us the right to privacy? What amendment says Americans have a right to privacy under the Constitution? Anybody tell me?
Isn't that the Fourth Amendment?
Ella says the Fourth Amendment, which is a really good starting point, right? Fourth Amendment says that people shall be free from unreasonable searches and seizures without a warrant. That's a good starting point, right? But that's mainly criminal procedure, right? We didn't like it when the hated British broke down the doors and stormed in and stole George Washington's stuff, whatever they did. So the Fourth Amendment, okay, that's a pretty good starting point. But that's about unreasonable searches and seizures. We have the right to privacy, gives us the ability to, right to privacy gave individuals the ability to not have their doors busted down and arrested for who they choose to be in a romantic relationship with, or the right of a woman to get an abortion before gestational viability. And trust me, we are not getting into the rightness or wrongness of Roe versus Wade in this class. It is not something I'm qualified to talk about outside the scope. However, that's not unreasonable searches and seizures, right? Because the government isn't knocking down the door of the abortion clinic. The right to privacy in the United States is not found in any one individual amendment. It is what is called a penumbra of rights. Essentially, there's this theory that if you look at the Bill of Rights, especially the first 9 amendments, and once you get in and a little bit in the 14th Amendment, that there's this general idea of privacy. There's this general skepticism of the government's ability to infringe upon our rights as free citizens and free Americans. So the short answer is there is none. There's at least no explicit right to privacy in the Constitution. Don't know why that happened. Now, sorry. The one thing that really is not helpful about trying to do online classes is when it does not work. All right. Sorry. Wait a second. Okay, so most of the time, constitutional right to privacy really doesn't have a lot of applicability to media law. Constitutional right to privacy is primarily found in things like abortion rights or the ability to regulate intimate conduct between people, or the ability to keep like if the cops take your phone, do you have to give over your password or your thumbprint so they can unlock your phone, stuff like that. By and large, what we're going to be talking about here, the Constitution acts as kind of like a outer, kind of like if you think about a baseball diamond, where you have the kind of fence, but there's a whole lot of room to operate within the middle. That's kind of what we're looking at here, right? The Constitution acts as an outer barrier, but by and large, we're going to be looking at state law here, not so much what the Constitution dictates. And all 50 states and DC recognize privacy in some form, but they're going to come from federal law and they're going to be coming from state law. So we're not going to be looking at constitutions so much as individualized state laws. And what makes this section particularly difficult to talk about is that there are 4 main privacy torts. Torts, again, are legally redressable harms, and they are intrusion upon seclusion, public disclosure of private facts, publicity which places somebody in a false light, and appropriation of name or likeness. These are the 4 general ones. North Carolina doesn't recognize 2 of them. North Carolina doesn't recognize false light. They don't recognize public disclosure of private facts. But Virginia does. And if you go out to, say, Missouri, you might get 3 out of 4. So it's kind of difficult, and that's why we're not really going to talk much about false light, and we're not going to talk too much about public disclosure of private facts. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but not too terribly much. So I do want to briefly touch upon public publication of private facts. These are, because they're going to come up if you work in media, and they're defined as the public revelation of truthful information that is not of public concern and a reasonable person would find offensive if made public. Does anybody know who the woman on the right is? Who? Right, Marcia Clark, one of the prosecutors on the OJ case. And the reason I use Marcia Clark is mainly so that I can tell you guys to watch The People versus OJ Simpson on FX. It is amazing, and it is my favorite season of television of all time, and that is my weird gospel of TV shows to watch. So, but that is certainly one. But one of the episodes in The People versus OJ Simpson that I really, really enjoyed is one called Marcia, Marcia, Marcia. And it goes into a little bit that during the height of the OJ Simpson trial, Marcia Clark was one of the most famous people in the world. I don't think that, I mean, I was 5 years old at the time. You guys weren't born, I imagine, during the OJ Simpson trial, which makes me feel a little bit old. But we don't have anything like that now. Because of the diffusion of how people consume media with the internet and the rise of cable TV and everything like that, I don't think it could exist because the media landscape isn't so concentrated as it used to be. But Marcia Clark was incredibly famous, and incredibly famous for a very public reason, the prosecution of a criminal or an alleged criminal. And a newspaper got a hold, because Marcia Clark was married and then got divorced, got a hold of honeymoon photos that she had, where she was on a topless beach in France. And they ran them. And obviously, this is going to make us all feel a little bit icky, right? And there is certainly a very real sexist undertone to the publication of these pictures. But let's leave that aside for just a second. I don't want to diminish that importance because it obviously is there and plays into the sociological impact of this particular story. But from a legal perspective, let's leave that to the side. Do you guys find, and maybe you don't, and if you don't, I'm very interested to hear why. Do you find putting this photo, and it wasn't blacked out, putting this photo in a newspaper, do you find that offensive? Does anybody not find it offensive and wants to justify it? Again, not saying anybody's right or wrong, but I'm interested to hear that theory. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of negative light was pointed at her, right?
I feel like that's
Yeah, definitely intended to paint her in a negative light. It wasn't like a. There's an intent to humiliate in a way, right? Why do we care about Marcia Clark? Because she is one of the prosecutors in one of the most highly publicized cases in the trial. Do we care about Marcia Clark because of how she looks on a topless beach in France 15 years ago? No. And I think that a reasonable person would find that that was offensive. I probably would. Is she going to be able to sue for publication of private facts? The answer is no. Why? Where was this picture taken? Was it on a public beach? Probably, yes. Somebody else took it, obviously. Marcia Clark not having any clothes on. Is that a private fact? No, it's not. One of the things I really want you guys to know about this is that the publication of private facts doctrine that says you cannot do this, it is not the same as being offensive. It is not the same as being rude or nasty or malicious. Because we might want to punish that from a personal standpoint. And there are other areas of law that is not relevant to this class, things like intentional infliction of emotional distress or unintentional infliction of emotional distress. This is about privacy. And trust me, I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that what happened to Marcia Clark was justified from a society perspective. Because I don't think it was. But this is intended to protect people's privacy. And this is a picture taken in public. Okay? And this is one of those areas where we can be mad, we can be upset, and I personally am. But that doesn't mean we can change the law as it exists, a law that is designed to protect privacy and extend it to something different. Question was, for people online, if it was taken in her house, if this was something that her husband took in a bedroom, yes, absolutely. And that's what we're going to be looking at when we talk about Hulk Hogan. That's going to be kind of where we dig in deep with this. Publication of private facts, because that was not Hulk Hogan in public. Okay. Publication of private facts. Only living people can sue. And these are people in the corporeal sense. Flesh and blood. Corporations might be people according to Mitt Romney, which is a now a dated reference, but they are not people for the purposes of this. Does anybody know who the guy on the left is? I will be incredibly impressed if anybody knows who this guy is. Lived about 105 years ago. Make sure that I know who this guy is. Actually, I got it wrong. This is President Warren G. Harding. Warren G. Harding was the 29th president of the United States. He served from 1921 to 1923. Not a particularly well-known president. So why do I care about William McKinley? Or not William McKinley, sorry, Warren G. Harding. President Warren G. Harding decided that the West Wing and the White House was the perfect place to father a love child. And not only did he think it was the perfect place to father a love child, but wrote in great and graphic detail about his exploits while in the White House to the mother of his illegitimate child. These letters were saved, and about 5-6 years ago were released. Now, do I think it's a little bit funny to read these letters? Because it's very 1920s, and apparently he was a very hot person in the 1920s, allegedly. Is this a private fact? Yes, it absolutely is, right? No, he certainly didn't want this to get out. This is a family matter. If he was still alive, would it be public disclosure of private fact? The answer is probably not, because the disclosure of it would not be unreasonable, would not be offensive to people. But we wouldn't even get there, because the descendants of Warren G. Harding are not going to be able to sue for the disclosure of this private fact, because Warren G. Harding is dead. And this is because of the damages. When we're looking at damages, we're talking about how do we legally compensate this individual for the harm that they suffered. In defamation, we are compensating somebody for the loss of reputation that the false statement about them incurred. Here, we're talking about pain and suffering. Somebody reveals something private about you, that causes you harm. Somebody reveals my personal medical information, that causes me harm. That is going, and that emotional anguish, that emotional pain, that's going to be compensable in the same way that if I hit somebody with my car and they break their neck, I'm going to owe them money for that too. So, here are the elements of publication of private fact. Number one, public disclosure. Number two, a private fact. Number three, that would be offensive and objectionable to a reasonable person. And the disclosure is not of public concern, essentially newsworthiness. So when we're looking at Warren G. Harding, he might be able to meet the first two pretty easily, actually, right? This was posted about in newspapers in 2015. The fact was probably private. We could even say that posting about this might be offensive and objectionable, but is the president having an affair and fathering a love child while in the White House, including in the supply closet of the White House, as he went into great detail in one of his letters? Is that newsworthy? Yeah, definitely is. And maybe you don't care about the personal life of a president. But if Bill Clinton and Donald Trump have taught us anything, it's that extramarital affairs are certainly newsworthy, as dictated by the news ratings that happens when these things are revealed. And people are going to use it as part of what they vote for. Because remember, when you vote, you're not really voting only for policies. Otherwise, we'd have direct democracy. You're voting for the people. And trustworthiness and integrity and whatever else you want to assign to an extramarital affair, that's going to play into public discourse, public disclosure. Or sorry, public debate. Okay, so let's take these one at a time. Public disclosure is a public at large. Because again, we are looking at the damages. And the damages that we are compensating is public humiliation of having a secret that you don't want out there revealed. If I know something bad about somebody else and I go tell my friend, what damages does that person suffer? The answer is probably not much, and likely none, if they don't know my friend. And they're certainly not going to be subject to public humiliation because I told my friend their secret. Now, there is no number, okay? There is no, if 1,000 people know about it, then the public has been informed. If 999 people know about it, then the public has not been informed. This, by and large, is not going to be that big of a deal for what we're looking at because we're looking at media law. And if you're a media company who cannot reach the public at large, you're a bad media company. Okay. I really like this one, actually. I don't like it, but I like this example. Private fact. Private fact is defined as an intimate detail about one's private life. Common examples are going to be things like medical conditions, sexual orientation, and history, as well as financial status. I make so much money. I have been in a relationship with this person. I have this disease. And one of the things that has to be private, it doesn't mean nobody else can know about it. It doesn't literally mean only you know about it. It just means it cannot be known by the public at large, a small group of people, close friends, close confidants, things like that. Now, does anybody know who Adam Schefter is? Who's Adam Schefter? Whoever. Yeah. We're going to go to Adam Schefter with an ESPN insider tip, and this player's signing with this team, and they're going to get paid more money than I will ever see in my life for playing a game, right? And I say this as a football fan, but somebody getting paid $500 million to play football is a little bit silly. But that's what he does, right? Or this player's injured, or this player is mad at that player, right? He's kind of, at the end of the day, he's a very well-paid gossip columnist, but he does that very well. And on July 4th of 2015, a player called Jason Pierre-Paul, who recently won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady, decided that he wanted to go and do the good old American thing and play with some fireworks. That's what we all like to do. Unfortunately, Jason Pierre-Paul also did the great old American thing and didn't let go of that firework when it went off. So Jason Pierre-Paul woke up on July 4th with 10 fingers and went to bed that night with 8 fingers. Now, again, he's getting paid more money for playing one game than I will ever see in my life. So do I feel that bad about poking fun at Jason Pierre-Paul? Well, not really. Also, don't own fireworks. But this was a big deal, right? He was one of the stars of the New York Giants at the time, which is one of the NFL's marquee franchises. And people had no idea what was going on. They knew there was an accident. They knew that there was an injury. They knew that it was serious. But that's all people knew. Now, is this a matter of public concern? That Jason Pierre-Paul is going to lose 2 of his fingers? Yes. It is, right? You can find sports dumb, and I have many people in my family who think sports are very dumb. But we've established that it's a matter of public concern. The Super Bowl is the most watched program in the country for the entire year. And a court is not going to say, I don't like football, it's not a public concern. It is. He's a celebrity, he's a public figure. It is going to be considered private. And there are 2 things we've got to look at here as to what it's private, though. Because what he did, for people who might be having a little bit of trouble seeing, is Adam Schefter reported that Jason Pierre-Paul was going to have his right index finger amputated. That is probably not going to be a private fact. Why?
They always have injury reports.
Well, they all have an injury report. So leave aside so I'm talking about in the moment. How many people know that Jason Pierre-Paul is missing a finger?
And how it's managed.
He's in a hospital. Doctors, nurses, a lot of people are going to be able to see. And you know what? This might be a private thing in a little for right now. Unless he's going to have a very convincing prosthetic, it's not going to be a private fact for long. Unless he walks around with his hand behind his back for the rest of his life, people are going to be able to count and see how many fingers he has. So you might have an argument that for the limited amount of time it's going to be a private fact, but it's certainly not going to be for long. But Jason Pierre-Paul sued, saying, you violated my right of privacy. And the immediate reaction is, well, no, I didn't. A, I know you don't got a finger. By the time you file this lawsuit, everybody in the world knows you don't have a finger. And you're a public figure. You use your hands for a living. What are you doing saying that information about your hands is not considered in public interest? Here's where Adam Schefter got in trouble. Bottom is fine. I've learned that Jason Pierre-Paul is going to have his right index finger amputated on July 8th of 2015. But he also attached a picture. Do we know what HIPAA is? HIPPA? It's a law. Health Information Privacy Protection Act, I think is what it's called. Sorry?
Something like the attorney-client privilege, right? But it just for like
It's an extension of that, right? Essentially, I have my medical records. None of you all can go down to my doctor and be like, hey, let me see Professor Bischini's medical records. I'm curious. Do you have high cholesterol? What's his blood type, right? You guys can't do that. I can't do it for you, thank God. Kind of the similar thing to FERPA. I don't remember what FERPA. It's just the educational records, Federal Education Records Protection Act. Essentially, it limits who can have access to your medical records, which means that we as a society have determined that actually viewing somebody's medical records is a violation of their privacy. And that's what Adam Schefter did. He sent out a picture of somebody's medical records. That is a separate fact. That's a separate analysis. Is it a private fact? Yes. No matter how many people are going to go see that Jason Pierre-Paul is missing this finger, I'm not going to be able to go and see his medical records. And is it newsworthy? There's an argument that it's not. Because the information is newsworthy, but seeing the actual medical record is not. It doesn't add anything to the public debate. It doesn't add anything to the newsworthiness. Now, Adam Schefter would come back and say, this is how I verify my sources, because whenever you see an Adam Schefter report on Twitter, one of the top comments is that, like, you're full of it, you don't know what you're talking about, you're making this up because you hate my team, or you hate this guy, or you're doing a favor to the agent. This was his way of trying to support his reporting and give it a factual basis. But a judge who looked at it said no. This, at least arguably, meets the definition of public disclosure of private fact. And ESPN settled for an undisclosed amount before it went to trial. Okay, facts that appear in public records by definition can't be considered private. Your mugshots are not private. If anybody in here has a mugshot. There's a really interesting podcast that if anybody's curious, I'd be happy to send them, about the industry, the cottage industry that has kind of cropped up with like showing people's mugshots, and then you can pay $300 to have that taken down. The argument is that while that might be embarrassing for you, and there might not be a lot of newsworthiness, it might give a misleading impression as to your guilt or innocence. It's a public record. Mugshots are public record. You can't say that it's private. Additionally, photographs taken in public almost certainly do not reveal private facts, which is where Marcia Clark would have been out of luck were she to try and sue. All right, so because I cannot show video clips in this class anymore, because YouTube doesn't like me and neither does this setup here, let me give you some background. Do you know who Terry Bollea is? I guarantee every single one of you guys has seen Terry Bollea somewhere on your television screens. He was in Muppets in Space, year 2000. Okay, so maybe you guys know him better as his stage name, Hulk Hogan. You guys have all heard of Hulk Hogan. Turns out that that is not his God-given name. I know I'm breaking some news. He was not born, and Mrs. Hogan did not name him Hulk. So, in 2006, Hulk Hogan was filmed without his consent having sexual relations with the wife of one of his neighbors. This guy on the right, you may want to know, guess what his name is? Or his stage name? Bubba the Love Sponge. So for the rest of class, we are going to focus on the twisted and sordid tale of Hulk Hogan versus Bubba the Love Sponge. And sometimes I wonder how I can take my job seriously. But this is, and we'll get to it a little bit later on, but in this particular situation, he was videotaped without his consent, or at least arguably without his consent. That is a private fact. No matter how repugnant you might find Hulk Hogan or what he did it behind closed doors without any expectation that he was being recorded. Oh. Then you guys show offensiveness. It is a private fact that I do not like cheesecake. I don't like it. Don't know what people see in it. It's a weird texture, and I don't feel as though cheese should be the basis for a dessert. But it's a private fact. I just shared it with you guys, so maybe not so private. But if somebody comes and finds out that Professor Bischini doesn't like cheesecake and puts it on Twitter, okay, is it a private fact? Yeah. Is it publicly disclosed? You put it on Twitter? Yes, it's publicly disclosed. Is that offensive? That information that really anybody cares gets out there? No. So in order to prevail, you can't just show that you had a private fact revealed. You have to show that it was offensive, that the revelation was offensive. So the rule that you guys have is a plaintiff bringing a publication of private facts claim must show that under the circumstances, publishing the facts in question would have been two things: highly offensive to a reasonable person of ordinary sensibilities. That's a reasonable person standard again, rearing its weird, ugly head. Reasonable person is not you. If you are in a jury box and you are asked to determine whether or not a revelation of a private fact was offensive, you are not going to talk about your own opinion. You're going to be talking about a reasonable person within the society. And to give you the next chapter in the Hulk Hogan versus Bubba the Love Sponge Greek tragedy that we got going on here. Hulk Hogan didn't sue Bubba the Love Sponge. Well, he did, but they settled. Hulk Hogan sued Gawker. Gawker was an online publication kind of similar to Deadspin, kind of highly irreverent. I hate the phrase guerrilla journalism, but it's kind of what's appropriate here. And they posted the clip of Hulk Hogan's sex tape. And Hulk Hogan sued, saying, this is a private fact. You revealed that private fact. I should be entitled to damages. And the Dr. Drew clip that I was going to show, but I'm afraid would crash literally this entire building if I try to, is a deposition with the chief editor of Gawker at the time. And they were getting into, the lawyer for Hulk Hogan was kind of really pressing this guy on what is newsworthiness. Because Gawker's defense the entire time is Hulk Hogan's a celebrity. And he's cheating on his wife with a neighbor. Like, that's celebrity gossip. And celebrity gossip isn't $1 billion industry because nobody cares. So it's newsworthy. And so the lawyer for Hulk Hogan was really pushing this editor, saying, well, are all celebrity sex tapes newsworthy? Like, if you got this about any celebrity, would you push it? Would you publish it? And the editor says, well, I would, right? I'm a journalist. I'm going to publish anything because I think it's newsworthy. People want to see it. And then he stops. He says, he puts a little bit of a caveat on there. And he says, well, maybe not a child. And the attorney for Hulk Hogan says, a child under what age? And the editor says, I don't know, 4. I know it's daylight savings time, and I know everybody in here's a little bit groggy and out of sorts, and everybody's eyes went like this. You're in a jury box. You're looking at whether or not the revelation of Hulk Hogan sex tape, as much as you might not like Hulk Hogan, because this is also around the time when Hulk Hogan was kicked out of the WWE, because as part of this, a whole bunch of racist stuff about Hulk Hogan came out. Now, apparently it's fine, because Hulk Hogan's back in the WWE, because there's a statute of limitations on racism. I don't know. But you might not like Hulk Hogan, but then you have this editor for this online publication saying, tacitly, that if a celebrity was 6, that he'd publish it. You're a jury member. How are you liking that guy right now? Not good. Now, was he being serious? I think probably not. The guy seems like kind of a tool, but I don't think he's enough of a tool to actually do that. But he gave a glib, kind of shitty answer. And it also reinforces this idea that he is not interested in newsworthiness. He's interested in being provocative. He's interested in being offensive. And that's the business model of Gawker at the time. All right. So newsworthiness. The general rule is that the public disclosure of a private fact is not actionable if the fact is newsworthy. Because think about all the things that politicians and celebrities and local officials do that would be considered private. What Bill Clinton did to Monica Lewinsky was private. It happened behind closed doors. It wasn't out in public. Only the two of them knew about it at the time. Private. But is the president using his position of power to essentially commit sexual misconduct against an intern? Is that newsworthy? Yeah, it is. At the very least, it's skeezy as heck and possibly rises to the level of criminality. So if we don't have this exception, then it would allow celebrities and allow famous people to suppress legitimate news reports about them. Because remember, this is all true stuff. Hulk Hogan could not sue Gawker for defamation because he actually did what he was reported doing. It wasn't a deep fake. It wasn't his brother Brett Hogan, and they said it was Hulk Hogan. Like, it was Hulk Hogan. So it's not defamation because it's true. This is a separate thing. Now, courts historically, and this is one of the reasons that the Hulk Hogan trial was so interesting for a lot of different reasons, courts historically have been incredibly deferential to news organizations. If a news organization says that something is newsworthy, then who is a court to overturn that decision? I don't expect you guys to know this entire quote. But public figures, in analyzing the element of newsworthiness, balance the public's right to know against the plaintiff's privacy interest by drawing a protective line at the point the material ceases to have any substantial connection to the subject matter of the newsworthy report. Essentially, once the public is no longer aided by the publication of particular facts or particular images or whatever else, then it is no longer considered newsworthy. And the quote that is used that I think really went to the heart of this Hulk Hogan case is, although, quote, legitimate public interest does not include a morbid interest, or sorry, include a morbid and sensationalist prying into another's private life for its own sake. There has to be a public interest element here. It doesn't allow just for the revelation of facts to punish somebody. And again, I can't sew this. Because it'll, actually, I'm going to try. I might regret it, but I'm going to try it. Let's see. Ha ha ha. Okay. Sorry, shouldn't be that excited about this.
Thank you. Now, by the way, I love talking about laundry as much as the next guy, but can we talk about this sex tape thing?
Oh, sex tape.
All right, wait. So let me understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Last time you were here, let's backtrack. You said to me, you looked me in the eye point blank, and you said, man code, I would never break the man code. I would never bang another guy's wife.
A buddy's wife.
A buddy's wife. Want me to play the clip?
Yeah, please.
Okay, here's the clip. Just so you know I'm not making this up.
No.
All right, here we go. Would you ever fuck Heather?
No.
You would not?
No. Man law, brother.
You would honor that man law.
Yeah. Even if they were divorced for 10 years.
You would never fuck
She's
Heather.
off limits
Or if
forever.
I met your ex-wife simply because she was
You
your
wouldn't fuck
ex-wife.
my ex-wife?
No way.
I love you, man.
No,
Thank you.
That's man law, bro.
I
You don't do
love that you
that. You don't do
understand that.
You don't do that.
Well, what happened?
That was protection mode.
You were in protection mode. That I
Protection mode.
understand.
You
I
lied
do.
to us.
You lied to me.
Well, I had my fingers crossed, my toes were crossed. Okay. And I'm not trying to make an excuse other than I was beaten down like a dog. And
You were feeling low, and you were looking for comfort,
I
too.
wasn't even doing that. My wife, you know, had just made a decision that she'd gone back to California. I was at home with the racing team that we had at the time, the drifting team.
Right.
And it was just one of those things that after a phone call, which was this, that, and the other, and done, over with, F this, F that, F you, click. I just, you know, went by Bubba's to say, hey, bro, I'm going to hang out. And it just was one of those moments I said, hell with it.
I'm going to go for it.
Just, and it was, you know, it was a huge, horrible decision. It's totally, you know, never dreamed in a million years there would be a camera in Bubba's house. My family's been destroyed by stuff that has happened.
Sure.
And now I'm going through something now.
Will you press charges?
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna.
Oh,
You're
yes,
going
sir.
ahead with this.
Yes,
because
sir.
you've got to prove to the
I
world,
gotta
too, that
find
you're
out who
not in
did
on
this
it.
to
Yeah,
me.
right. Because if some people are going to be skeptical and go, nah, Hulk Hogan's in on it.
You know,
There was a guy on the phone just saying that.
I was honestly trying to be cool.
Right.
When the pictures came out, I took a huge hit. My wife, Jennifer, who's not part of this media circus, believe me, she's not, bro.
And I don't care even if you did it before you met her. It's still going to bum her the fuck out
Oh,
to
of
see
course
pictures
it
of you
did.
banging a chick.
Of course
right.
it did.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you know, thank God it happened before her because, bro, I'm straight up about there's no reason to hide anything now.
And you
happened.
do
It really rattled my world bad. You know, I'm surprised, and I pray to God that Jennifer hung on. Let me tell you something, brother.
Yeah.
For 2 years, Heather and Bubba were saying how cool this was.
Right.
No problem, no problem. This and you know, Bubba was saying it's cool. Honestly, Heather was relentless. I want to see your thing. I want to F you.
Right.
On and on and on. I mean,
Right. But
when
I
I'd
don't
see him, or when I'd be on the phone with Bubba, she'd grab the phone. And so, you know, I feel like an idiot. Well, and like I said, this, just what they've shown has totally devastated, and I can't even begin to tell you how bad It's totally destroyed my world. On a personal level, I pray to God that Jennifer can hang in there with me.
Really?
Because
Do you
this
think
is
it could?
something that happened before I met her.
We can't hear you. If you can hear me. Hello, John. Fuck.
I just realized that I'm muted. Sorry about that. I went an entire semester without doing that. Sorry about that, you guys. I will post a little bit of an upload and link to let you guys know what I was talking about. Hopefully you didn't miss too much. Sorry about that.
So tomorrow I'm free at 2 or either.